You can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Dharma Bum Temple, Tuesday night, and it's good to sit with you all. I think I've missed the last couple Tuesdays, just been doing the Saturdays, so glad to be back on a Tuesday night. I've been doing this on Saturdays and a little bit, just started recently, but just the importance of connecting. So we may have some new people joining us tonight, or just some of the regulars. Why don't we take a minute or two before we get settled? And on the YouTube, on the right side, probably there's a little chat box somewhere. And why don't you just go ahead and type something in that you're grateful for in your life just from today. These are difficult times for a lot of people, and often we stop and or we don't stop and begin to recognize things we could be grateful for. So let's take a few moments and just, you can say a lot, whatever you'd like about something that happened today that you're grateful for. So feel free, and then we'll go from there. I'll start. I'm grateful to be here. I received a really beautiful email to the Dharma Bum Temple account, and it was someone who started with the community years ago, probably, 6, 7 years ago at least. And the funny thing is, it's someone that I've never once had a conversation with, but have been sitting with him for years. And they sent just a really beautiful email about how they found really this place and this practice at a very difficult time of their life. And so it was just a reminder every day about the importance of building community, building a place that's safe, comfortable environment, and that every person who's ever played a part in creating this space, the Dharma Bum Temple, it really does change and save people's lives. And so when I received this email, I receive it, and it's always really nice to see it, and makes me feel good. But it's really just a reflection of everybody that has touched this temple over the years and made it what it is. So I'm grateful for that person, for that email, and for all of you who make this place what it is. So anything else? Gratitude.
David's grateful for living in San Diego.
Great.
Marley's grateful for being able to walk in the sun today. Mary's grateful that her family and herself are healthy, and grateful for the Dharma Bum Temple. Lizzie is grateful for good friends that take the time to understand them. Carla's grateful for her friends and neighbors all looking out for each other.
Yep. Beautiful. Anything else? One more? That's it?
Dustin's grateful that his neighbor's desert garden has yellow butterflies.
Nice. Yeah. Butterflies are great. Yellow butterflies are great. Yeah, again, just before we start the meditation, it's so important to, if it's not a practice of yours already, to just take a moment each day. You can even do it morning, afternoon, and night, and just stop, and whether you write it down or whether you text it to somebody or whether you just say it out loud or quietly to yourself, just stop for a minute, look around, and just find something that you're grateful for, because it will change the way you perceive that moment. And if you change the way you perceive that moment constantly, you'll feel much better about yourself and the world around us. So thank you all for sharing. I appreciate it. I think connecting now online is more important than ever. So we'll start with a meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. For those who might be brand new, nothing's going to happen to you. You won't float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. You're not going to figure anything out whatsoever. Your mind that races all day long won't shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working? Is it not working? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds, right? Wherever you're at, you're at home, you're in your car, who knows where you are. There's sounds around you. This is life. Life is filled with chaos, and the practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Don't expect anything, okay? We're just going to sit and breathe. Posture, if you're on a cushion, it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. If you're on a bench or a chair or whatever you're sitting on, also try to sit up straight. If you're on a couch or in bed, try to stay awake. We're not here to go to sleep, we're here to wake up. So I will guide us as we begin. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply going to continue this practice observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Where is your mind? Return attention, focus to the breath. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgment from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. And with the body still, rested. And the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, just as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around you or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means for all of us is that every moment of our lives, things happen, and we react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's what we get. The practice of meditation is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way we responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you feel the rest of your days. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun, but it's free. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's simply sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. Don't complicate this practice. Every moment of our lives is an opportunity to practice. It's not just sitting in meditation quietly. It's interacting with every person, place, and thing you do all day long. It's how you speak with people. It's how you order food. It's how you spend time on hold with customer service. This is the practice. It's the cultivation of wisdom and compassion. To be wise enough to know that you're not the most important person in the world. And to be compassionate to understand that all people mean as much as you do. It's putting into practice what my understanding of non-self is, which is to recognize that we are no better or worse than anyone else. It doesn't mean we don't exist. It means that every human being has their life and their views and their experiences and their challenges and their difficulties and their joys, just like we do. But for some reason, often we operate from the lens of me. I need this, I want this, I must have this. To me, this practice is about recognizing what do others need, what do others want, and how can you be a benefit to them. Yes, you have to take care of yourself. You have to balance that as well. It's not about neglecting your physical and mental or emotional experience, but recognizing that each human deserves the same love and affection and care and respect and decency as the next, regardless of what you think about them. This is a difficult one, because often we tend to look at people we like and dislike and we treat them differently. When you look at the Buddhist teachings, he was very skillful. He treated people very differently, meaning he shared different stories, different examples, different ways for them to figure out how to end suffering. I should say he responded to people differently, not so much that he treated people differently. And so the practice is to recognize how can we respond to people in a way that brings a sense of kindness and compassion. Use this time to break some habits or patterns that you've been stuck in for a long time. Use this time to see how you can be a benefit to those around you, because you can. So I think I'd rather just stop right there, and I always prefer really just to respond to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with right now that I can address. Again, if you're new to YouTube or new to joining us, on the screen there, just type a question. Travis will read it, I'll repeat it, and respond. So we use the rest of the time tonight for questions.
So Kitty shared that they have a beginner with them, and I was wondering if you could discuss the Four Noble Truths.
Yeah. So the Four Noble Truths, it's, I'll share it in brief, but I'll also say that, I read years ago that the Four Noble Truths really sum up the entire body of the Buddhist teachings. And when, I think to put it into context, especially for someone who's new, let me give you the 60-second version, maybe 2-minute version of the life of the Buddha. But he was born in India 500 years before Christ, so 2,500 years ago. He was a prince, his father was a king, obviously, and he was raised in a palace, sheltered for 29 years of his life. He had all the wealth, all the riches, everything you could imagine. And at 29 years old, he snuck out. It happened over a period of 4 nights, but he snuck out and he saw what's called the 4 sights: old age, sickness, death. And he saw an ascetic, a very simple kind of nun or monk. And he'd been sheltered from all these things because they knew that if he was out in the real world and he saw people suffering, he wouldn't want to stay in and be a prince and eventually a king. So he saw these things, he decided to leave, and for 6 years he roamed the base of the Himalayan mountains. And his basic practice was to begin to understand how to awaken, how to enlighten, how to figure out how to end suffering. So after 6 years, he sat down under a Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, India, and he sat for 21 days. There are many different versions of this story, but he sat for 21 days, and after this period of time, he had what they call the awakening, and these 5 guys came up to him he had been traveling with before, and they had all left him at one point in time, but they looked at him and they said, "There's Siddhartha. It looks like he's figured something out. We will go sit with him." So they sat down, and Siddhartha gave what's called the first turning of the Dharma wheel, which is the first teaching in Buddhism. And it is what's called the Four Noble Truths. The first one that Buddha said was, life is filled with dukkha. The word dukkha translates usually to suffering, but I feel it's a pretty poor translation of the word because suffering, at least in English, sounds so heavy, sounds so drastic. Suffering could be, ordering a sandwich and you get mayonnaise on it. Suffering could be stuck in line at Starbucks. Suffering could be, they didn't make your latte the right way, right? All these little things. Dukkha is really discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction, anything throughout your day that goes differently from how you want it to be, which is pretty much your entire life. So when I hear the expression life is dukkha or life is suffering, to me what that means is our entire lives we're going to have moments that don't go how we want them to. It doesn't mean all of life sucks, but life is filled with dukkha, suffering. It's the first one. The second one is the cause of suffering. And the Buddha taught that the cause is 3 things. It's called the 3 poisons: greed, anger, and ignorance. Greed in that we always want more, right? You have an iPhone 7, it's 6 months old, you want an iPhone 8. You have an iPhone 8, it's a year old, you want an iPhone 9. Right? Whatever we have, we always want more. We often want more. We feel like what we have isn't enough, so there's this greed and craving for more and more and more. Think of all the shoes you have, or all the shirts you have, or just all the clothes you have. Do you not have enough? Probably, but will you continue to buy and shop and get more? Most likely. But if you gave away half of what you have, could you still live the rest of your life with what you have? Most likely. But we want more. So we're often greedy. The second one is anger. We're angry at ourselves, we're angry at our family, we're angry at our friends, we're angry at people we don't know, we're angry at strangers. There's just this constant sense of anger at the way the world is. And the third one is ignorance. Ignorance, basically ignoring the true nature of reality. Ignoring true nature of reality means that there is our perception of reality, and then there is reality itself, right? So, I've never done this without a live audience, but I'll attempt to do the only Buddhist trick I know without a live audience, just to kind of illustrate what ignorance is. So I think it was Katie who had somebody new with them for the first time, right? So Katie's person who's new for the first time, I want you to look at this. What is it? Tell Katie. Katie will type it in. So whoever's with Katie, I want you to tell me what this is. And I will sit here all night long until Katie types her response, which is fine by me. You won't like it so much, but...
Katie said bowl.
It's a bowl. Katie's friend says it's a bowl. Okay, are you sure, Katie's friend? Now I want you to watch what happens very carefully to this bowl. Right? What is it now? Katie's friend should answer the question. It is a I'm waiting. Come on, Katie, play along here. We don't have all night.
Her friend's name's Erica, and she said it's a hat.
It's a hat, thank you. Or it's a bowl on my head, but you called it a hat, right? So this hasn't changed, right? We see it, we hold it, we hit it, we think it's a bowl, we put it on our head, now it's a hat. It's a very small hat. But your entire life, Erica, is that way, that you perceive things one way. And you are welcome to have those perceptions of reality. But ignorance means that you think your perception is correct. Well, what about everyone else around you? Is their perception correct or incorrect? To me, my understanding of ignorance is that we all roam around thinking our view of the world is correct. And we are ignoring the fact that there's the actual ultimate truth, which is different from how we perceive it to be. So greed, anger, ignorance are the three poisons. We overcome greed with generosity. Give time, give attention, give a heart, give a smile, give love, give an emoji, whatever. Just give, right? Whatever you have, give. We overcome anger with compassion. The best way to overcome anger is to have compassion towards yourself and others. And the third one to overcome ignorance is to practice wisdom. The wisdom to understand that what this really is based on how I use it. First it was a bowl, then it was a hat, then I take Lucky Charms and I put milk in it, and now it's a cereal bowl. So be wise enough to understand that your perception of reality, your perception of truth is only your perception. So those are the three poisons and how we overcome them. That's the second noble truth, the cause of suffering. The third noble truth is the ending of suffering. That's the good news, liberation, nirvana, freedom. It's like Groundhog Day and finally waking up and he's no longer in Groundhog Day. It's a great Buddhist movie. And the fourth one is the path. This is the Eightfold Path. Really, the heart of Buddhist teachings lies in these 8 steps. And they are to have correct views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. Views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. This I find summed up as your karma. Your karma is what you give. It's not what you get. Everything you think, everything you say, and everything you do. This is the Eightfold Path. All your thoughts, all your words, and all your actions make up the Eightfold Path. Right? So our entire lives, we impact everything we see, everything we touch, everything we feel, everything we observe, everything we move through. We have an impact in the world. That's our karma. It's not what goes around comes around, it's what we give. So to understand the Eightfold Path is to understand, how am I spending my time? What are my thoughts like? Are they pleasant, unpleasant, neutral? Are my thoughts to benefit others, or are they to benefit myself? What are my words like? How's my speech? Right? Or is it harmful? Is it divisive? Is it slander? Or is it honest? Is it timely? Is it necessary? And then the third one is, what are my actions? How do I actually engage in the world? What do I physically do? So the Eightfold Path is the fourth noble truth. Suffering is the first one. I like to say life includes suffering. Right? The second one is the cause. The third noble truth is the ending of it. And the fourth is the path that leads to the ending of suffering, known as the Eightfold Path. You can Google Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, and most of what you find on the first couple pages of Google will be pretty good. But that's a general overview. After the Buddha gave this teaching, they realized that he figured out something very simple, but also very complex. Meaning, it's easy to comprehend it, extremely difficult to do it. So they called him the Buddha. They said, we will call you the Buddha, the awakened one. And then at 35, the Buddha went on and continued to teach for 45 years. And at 80, he died. And then Buddhism spread out of India, went 100, 200 years later, south to Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia. Around the turn of the century, it goes north, China, Japan, Korea. Eventually makes its way west, 100 years ago to Europe and US and Canada. And here we are sitting at the Dharma Bum Temple, May 26, 2020. And we're exploring the Four Noble Truths the same way the Buddha did. Actually, completely differently than the Buddha did, but in many ways the same way. So I hope that helps with the Four Noble Truths. Other questions?
Dylan asked, how does the concept of discernment, the ability to judge well, and the concept of non-judgment both fit into this practice?
So how does the practice of discernment and the ability to judge well and the practice of non-judgment fit into this practice? Okay. It's a good question. Let me kind of preface this a little bit for those who might be new, is that often you'll hear in Buddhism that the idea of, or a way of living our lives, is to go beyond judgment, right? To not pass judgment on people, places, or things. And really it's about the practice of duality. Is very kind of a common teaching in Buddhism and Mahayana school of Buddhism. You look at the Diamond Sutra, the Heart Sutra, it's about non-duality. And that because we live a life of thinking good versus bad, right versus wrong, this versus that, we separate ourselves from everything and we make choices based on personal preferences. And so the practice is to cut through all of that. But it's to understand that we have to have discernment in our choices. So if the stove is hot, and I see that the stove is hot, and I don't make a judgment, and I don't have any discernment whatsoever about the stove, then I'm just going to continue to place my hand on a hot stove, and I'm going to continue to burn myself. So it's not about liking the stove or not liking the stove. It's not about critiquing the stove or not critiquing the stove. It's not about judging the stove or not judging the stove. It's about recognizing if I put my hand on a hot stove, I will get burned. So I should have a judgment and a discernment that says, don't do this. But without any distaste. Is that even a word, distaste? I don't know. Yeah. Without any distaste for the stove. And to be wise enough to know that the stove has its relationship to the world. So when we look at people, do we look at people and do we judge them? Do we have a discernment? Do we have these biases that kick in immediately based on what they look like, based on the color of their skin, based on the clothes they wear, based on where they are? Are you all sitting there right now looking at me with some dude who has a semi-shaved head in a Buddhist temple in front of Buddhist statues and thinking that I know what I'm talking about? That would be a judgment and a discernment based on where I'm at. And I would suggest to not make that assumption just because I'm sitting here. We don't know. So I hear people often talk about going beyond judgment or being non-judgmental. But I think it's important to understand that as a human and as unenlightened fools that we are, no offense to anyone who's not a fool out there, I'll speak for myself. As an unenlightened fool that I am, I'm going to judge, and I do judge, people and places and things all day long. But am I ignorant enough to think that that judgment is correct? Am I ignorant enough to think that my judgment is accurate? And am I wise enough to recognize that when I have a judgment, can I recognize it and just move on from it? That my conditioned life, my conditioned behavior, based on how I was raised and where I was raised and what I was taught growing up, created a set of conditions and patterns that I have in my life, which creates judgments. And can I see these biases that exist in my mind and move beyond them? And when I see them, can I believe that I'm not better than anybody else? And I'm not worse than anyone else? Discernment is critical, otherwise we would do foolish things all day long. So we must have discernment. I mean, anything in the Buddhist teachings that talks about practice kindness and compassion, we have to discern, is it really kind and is it really compassionate? We have to judge, is this the best situation to do something or to say something? So I'm personally not a huge fan of the way a lot of things are written about discernment and going beyond judgment and thinking that one day we're just going to wake up and have no judgments or no discernments. Because we do and we are. But how do we use them is what's important, I find. So hopefully that's helpful. And I can really only speak to, as always, my own personal experience with Buddhist teachings and practice. And what that's done is it's forced me to hold up a mirror and look back at myself. You know, I've been at this a long time, and I still have judgments, and I still make foolish decisions. But can I be honest enough to recognize them and work to not do them? And to not be ignorant enough to think that just because you read a bunch of Buddhist stuff or do a bunch of Buddhist things, that you have no judgment, right? So be real with yourself about the judgments that you make. Thanks for the question. It's a good question. Versus a bad question, which would be a discernment on my part.
Derek asked, what are the sutras?
What are the sutras? So the word sutra, like suture, literally translates to thread. And when the Buddha taught, again, 2,500 years ago, initially everything he taught was memorized. It was an oral transmission of the teaching. So it's not like they sat there with their iPads or recorders, writing everything down. And it was all memorized. All the monks and the nuns memorized the teachings, and they would pass them on orally. It was like a big game of telephone, right? If you played that when you were a kid, you sit in a big circle, you say bicycle to the person over here, and then by the time it goes around the circle over here, it ends up with like watermelon, right? So the sutras are kind of like that, but very different. The word thread, to me, has always been like a thread of the teachings, that they have been passed on from person to person to person, and they were eventually written down. So somewhere, and I'm not a scholar, but somewhere between 50 and 100 years after the Buddha died, a group came together at the council, first council, I believe, and they said that this is some good stuff, we should write it down. So one of the Buddhist disciples, who was foremost in memory, I think Ananda, had memorized all of the sutras, all of the teachings. And they decided to transcribe them, and they were written on palm tree leaves. That's how they were first recorded, written down. In fact, some little historical fun fact, the first ever form of block printing, you can Google this, but block printing, the first ever block printing was, I believe, the Diamond Sutra, one of the Buddhist teachings on block print form. So the sutras, when you read them, many of them will start out, thus have I heard, at such and such place, at such and such time, with such and such people, the Buddha once said. And what that means right there is it's not the Buddha speaking directly, it's somebody retelling what they heard him say. And this is what you have for 2,500 years. You have Buddhist sutras, which are a thread of the Buddhist teachings. And there's a lot of them. There are various schools of Buddhism. You have predominantly Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana, three major schools from Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia, and Tibet. And then Buddhism spread from there. But those are sutras. Often people ask to the Buddhists, is there like a Buddhist Bible? And it's not just one. There are just endless teachings. There's not just one Bible either, but it's an endless teaching from the Buddha. So hopefully that helps with sutra. And you can Google Buddhist sutras and you'll see tons of them right there. They're very practical. They're very straightforward for the most part. And they're really guidelines on what the Buddha taught and ways to live our lives. To be generous and moral and patient, and to work hard, to have a sense of concentration and focus. So they're good teachings. And whether you're Christian or Catholic or Muslim or Jewish or pagan or lack thereof, all of those, these are things and teachings and practices and philosophies that you can add into your life. That'll just make you hopefully a kinder, gentler, overall happier person, which will in turn benefit other people. Other questions? Anything else before we wrap up? We'll do one more question if you've got one. To Katie's friend Erica, did that question and the response on the Four Noble Truths, did that help? I'll take that as a maybe. Anything else before we close? All right, beautiful. So we'll join palms. And we do what's called a transfer of merit. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. So a few quick announcements before you all head off. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple 14 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice and meditation to local folks. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers. We're not looking for students, we're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those of you who show up. We have about 90% of our schedule online. So check that out. Tuesday night, I do the class here tonight. Wednesday, Alex does a metta, loving kindness meditation. Thursday, Travis does Dharma Bum basics and meditation. And then all our recovery classes, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, Sunday morning, Saturday morning, are all on Zoom. Our family group, our kids group, the teenage group, and the college group, everything is online as well. We just started, Bob is now doing putting Buddhist philosophy back into mindfulness. That's Sunday, 2:00. Natalie's doing the Tuesday afternoon Dharma at noon. So we have something every day, the Monday through Friday morning, 8 and 8:30, silent meditation. So please just go to the website for the schedule, click on the link, and you'll see the event, and then just open up to find out how to connect. I know these are difficult times for many people. It's also an incredible time to stay home and practice getting to know yourself, your own mind, the nature of your own thoughts, and to use this to really cultivate a kinder, gentler way of being. Please stay safe. Please stay home. These are scary times, and while things people seem to be wanting to open things up, we are not opening up. I don't see us opening up anytime soon. I'll write something eventually and send it out in a newsletter. But we're not opening up anytime soon just because bars and restaurants and places of worship are opening up. We're not. We built this place to be a safe, comfortable environment for the community. And there is nothing telling us that right now this is a safe or comfortable time to bring people into an enclosed space. So for those of you who are wondering when we're opening, no time soon. So we miss you, we love you, we'd love to see you soon, but it'll be a while. So thanks all for being here. Please be kind. If I never see you again, think good thoughts, speak good words, and do good deeds. Good luck.